Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Saturday live question and answer class. At the start today, I'm going to talk about the word onomatopoeia, talk about what it means, how to pronounce it, and give you some examples of onomatopoeia. And then I'll take your questions regarding anything having to do with American English pronunciation, spelling, American accent, whatever's on your mind and is going to help you improve in your English. Feel free to ask that in the comments in the chat at any time. If you're watching this later and it's not live and you have a question, you can leave that in the comments as well. I will go through and give you some resources, answer your question, or cover your word in a future class. So the word onomatopoeia is kind of daunting when you look at the length of it. It can be helpful to just break it down syllable by syllable, talk about what all of the sounds are in the word. So let's do that first. Looking at onomatopoeia, let's break it. So the first syllable, on, has the clear ah vowel, ana. Then our next syllable, letter O, has a reduced vowel, sounds like So we have a pattern here of clear and reduced vowels. Onomatopoeia. So you hear there's three sounds, three reduced vowels. Those are these schwas. Every other syllable. It's clear. It's longer, shorter, and longest, shortest. The stress is on the P syllable. So letter O says ana. Then letter A says mata, with those O's being schwas. Then this one's the weird one. We have the E, the tense E vowel, and the last letter A says Go slowly and then speed back up. That should help you to say this word fluently and easily. Sounds like onomatopoeia. Also letter T, I've rewritten it here for you with a D. It is a flap sound in this word. It's followed usually a letter T in the middle of a word in American English, followed by an unstressed syllable. We use that flap sound. Same thing we do for D's in the middle of words, so you can think of it as a D and you'll probably say it naturally and correctly. Once you can say onomatopoeia by itself, speed back up, get it going and easy in by the word by itself, and then you can start to use it in some phrases and sentences so that if you want to talk about onomatopoeia, you can say it naturally and fluently. So onomatopoeia is a name for words that sound like what they are. So these are words that were invented to represent certain sounds, and they come in some categories. So we have, first of all, animal noises like meow or gobble. Those were meant to sound like the sound that a cat or a turkey would make. We also have noises for explosions or loud sounds like boom or splat. We have words that represent noises from the movement of air or the movement of water, like puff or trickle. We have musical noises like toot. We have human-made noises like sneeze or cough or scream. These are all examples of the word is supposed to be similar to the sound as it occurs in nature. So that's what onomatopoeia is and how you pronounce it. You can certainly find more examples of that besides these simple examples, but those are the categories that tend to have onomatopoeic words. By the way, when we're changing to onomatopoeic, then we add, instead of the E sound, we have an A sound. It sounds like poeic, onomatopoeic. Okay, thank you for that request. Welcome, everyone. Do feel free to leave your comments and requests in the chat, and we can cover those next. We've been looking at your requests through our Word of the Day series, where each day I cover a new word and tell you how to pronounce it. Sometimes we talk about the definitions as well. We have a question about how to pronounce ought to. Just so that you know, I do have a video coming out on this soon talking about how we use ought to in fluent speech. So I'll let you know when that is ready and posts. So typically in fluent speech, if I'm just saying I ought to, it sounds like ah. I ought to. First syllable stress, we stress on the ought. And if we said it as two words, we'd have two T sounds. Ought to. That sounds like ought to. But in connected speech, we typically link these together, only make one T, and we reduce the oo to a schwa, so it sounds more like oughta. Because if I'm saying I ought to, then I'm going to say that T sound because I'm not linking them. But if I'm reducing it, my T now suddenly is in between two vowels, like it was in onomatopoeia, and it becomes a flap. It sounds more like a D. Then we end up with oughta, oughta. I ought to go. I ought to do that. That's very natural and typical. It's not incorrect or informal to say I oughta in American English, so you can pronounce it this way. You can also say I ought to, and that's also correct, or I ought to. So if you're changing to reducing the to a t, ought to, I ought to, you can either do ought to, I ought to go, I ought to tell her, or you can do oughta, I ought to tell her, I ought to go. So as I mentioned, I did make a longer video about this reduction, and it'll be airing soon. It'll be added to our Real Talk playlist, where we look at the written words versus the spoken words, how they sound. And it'll also be in our Real Talk online course on speechmodification.com, where we break down the technique of looking at written words versus spoken speech. So I hope you'll check that out, as well as our other online courses on the website, speechmodification.com. Okay, thank you for that question. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time if you have some. I'm going to go to some of our requests. So we had a request for the word corollary. So corollary. Let's take a look at that. So in corollary, we have first syllable stress. Letters OR do say or. That sounds like core. Then we have the reduced sound, the schwa, core, the letters AR in corollary say the air diphthong, so corollary. In the IPA, it's going to look like corollary. So corollary, the corollary. Yeah, that's a tough word for sure, because knowing that the or says or and letters AR say air. Oftentimes, knowing which R diphthong the word has is difficult, because letters AR can say or, air, or R. Letters OR can say or. So being able to read the IPA and see or and air can be very helpful, as well as listening for those R sounds and those R glides. I talk a lot more about this in our R playlist videos. I do have a video just about R diphthongs, as well as in our Sounds of English course. We go through all of the different spellings and sounds of the R when it's in the middle or at the ends of words, to help you correctly pronounce them and to decode those words. Okay, great. We have a question about how to link R and A. For example, for were sure. So for were so if I'm saying, for example, for a minute, for a while, basically I link by just having that R connect between the or and the schwa of so it sounds like for all one word, for a minute, for note that the in American English, typically we just say a schwa, an sound for that. You will sometimes hear native speakers say for a minute. Typically, though, the correct pronunciation is an sound, and oftentimes if you use a instead of for the word it's going to stand out and make your speech sound accented. Part of what we do when we're linking and connecting is using a lot of reduced sounds so that we can be fluent and smooth. And usually the word is not an important word, and it has that schwa pronunciation. If I'm saying, for example, we were a team, were, same thing happens where we have our sound. I'm going to rewrite it this way, like the word were, and then we just go directly into our we were a team. We were a good team, we were a pair, we were a pair for a while. Yeah, great question. Hopefully that helps you link that R to the word Great. Okay, let's go and I'll look for some other recent requests. Do feel free to put your requests in the comments at any time in the chat. All right, we had a request for the word caprice and capricious. So let's look at how this word changes in its two forms, in capricious and caprice. So in the word caprice, we have second syllable stress, caprice. So letters CA say have a reduced vowel. This letter A says ka. And then even though it looks like the word price with the I diphthong, it is an E in this word. So letters CE say S. So we have caprice. I'll rewrite that with two E's for that E vowel and two S's for this sound. Caprice. And then in capricious, we still have second syllable stress, but now my letter C is going to be paired together with this I, and it's going to make the sh sound. So it's going to sound like capricious. We again have an S sound. Here we have the schwa for the final syllable. So caprice and capricious. That's probably the main thing to recognize, that we have that sh, sh sound in capricious. Thank you for that request. Okay, we have a question about the tag. Whether or not you can omit the tag, the T in the tags, for example, aren't you and isn't he. So I would say those are not necessarily omitted. They're just pronounced how we typically would say, you're busy, aren't you? Aren't you? The T, when followed by a consonant sound, like the y of you, or what was the other example? Isn't he? When it's followed by a consonant sound, we tend to just make a stopped T. So I don't leave it off exactly. That would sound more like aren't you? Aren't you? You can hear how that doesn't quite sound the same as aren't you? Aren't you? When I'm making that stop T, my tongue goes up to the T position, but it doesn't release. That means that the N is going to be very short. Aren't you? My N just stops short to mark that T. And then for isn't he, same thing. I'm just going to not let that T out, make my N very short. He's a great guy, isn't he? Isn't he? Isn't he? Isn't he? In this case, what we will also often do is, instead of making a stop T, we will drop the H. So it'll sound more like, isn't he? Isn't he? In which case, when we do that, we do drop the T entirely and we link it together and we drop the H. So either he's a great guy, isn't he? Or he's a great guy, isn't he? Isn't he? Isn't he great? Isn't he? I think oftentimes we use this reduction for that. So how we say the T generally just depends on what's coming next. And if the next sound is a consonant sound, then we use that stop T. Great question. Thank you. Great question, isn't it? Oh, yeah. So one other example. Isn't it? Isn't it? In this case, we do drop the T. So normally when I have a T, if I'm saying, for example, isn't it great? Isn't it? I can either link it and use a flap. Isn't it isn't it nice out? Isn't it? Often though, instead, we'll just drop that T. Isn't it? Isn't it nice? That'll sound like, isn't it? So it depends again on the context. NT, oftentimes the T gets dropped. For example, words like internet or international, we just say inner instead of inter. Although you can say inter, in that case you need to say a true T. T is very complicated. I definitely recommend checking out my videos for the different things that T can say in different word positions, initial, medial, and final, what T does when it's linked. I cover this in detail in my Sounds of English course, as well as my American Accent 6-week course. I'll walk you through all of the different ways we link, how to use that flap T, that stop T to get the very American sound. It's one of the most typical patterns of the American accent that differentiates it from other English dialects. Thank you, that was a great question. Okay, we have a question about lobule and tubule. Okay, so these I'm not 100% positive about. I will have to check after class in the dictionary. But on first glance, if they follow the typical rules for pronunciation, we would have lobule. So in American English, O when it's stressed says the ah sound, and then bu would be have a gliding bu, like in beautiful, lobule, and tubule, lobule and tubule. And then this oo might be a little bit reduced, like lobule, yul, more of an and tubule. Same as in beautiful. In beautiful, it's an oo, and in these it'd be more of an because it's in the unstressed syllable. That needs to be verified. I need to look that up in the dictionary. Oh, I do have my dictionary here handy. So let's see if it's in Merriam-Webster. So I use the dictionary all the time because I always feel that, and I use multiple dictionaries. I think it's great to look at a few different references to make sure that you're, even if you're a native speaker, that you're pronouncing something correctly, and that sometimes there can be more than one pronunciation. So looking at lobule, this is not a word I'm actually familiar with. So there's lobular, lobule. So it's as I mentioned, first syllable stress, lobule, and it can be oo or ul. So it's a small lobe or a subdivision of the lobe. And for tubule, probably the same. We'll look that up as well. Often I also use online dictionaries because you can listen to a recording of the word, hear what it sounds like. So for tubule, yes, exactly the same. And a tubule is a slender, elongated anatomical channel. Okay, good. So as I mentioned, you can use that oo vowel. It also said that you could have a schwa, like more of an tubule, lobule, because the first syllable is stressed. Great, thank you for that request. I learned something today as well. Okay, we have a question about the word infuriated. So in infuriated, our stress is on the fur syllable, like the word fury. This is another example of a U that has a gliding y sound, infur. You can say this as infuriated with more of an ur. I tend to pronounce it with more of just the sound, like you're infuriated. The TED, we use a flap for that T, so it sounds like the word did. And first syllable stress, infuriated. I was infuriated when she didn't show up. Okay, and then your other question was for the word fiasco. Second syllable stress, letter I says E. Letter A says the A, black cat vowel, asco. And then our O says as O, and C says the K sound, fiasco. It was a real fiasco. Great, good word. Okay, and we have a question about the word senior. Here again, we have that gliding y sound before the end letters or say so we have the yer in the unstressed syllable, and then the stressed syllable is like the word seen. Senior. It's probably easier to think about the N as being on the first syllable, even though technically we might have senior, the NY glide, near. Just think about it like senior. You just don't make a break, so you need to be able to connect between the N and the glide, senior. Junior and senior year. Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Really great questions today, and kind of a little bit of a theme with those gliding y sounds. I hope that it was interesting to you, for you to learn about onomatopoeia, how to pronounce it and what it means. And I'll take a few final questions here, and then we'll wrap up for today. I'll be back tomorrow with another word of the day, and next Saturday, we may not have class. It is the Thanksgiving holiday over on Thursday and over the weekend. So I will post if I'm going to be going live next Saturday. Otherwise, I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks. Okay, we have a name. This I'm not sure. Probably Paget. But I would have to look it up, and it would probably depend on the actual person's name. It looks like it comes from the French. So it could either be Paget. No, it would be Paget with a j sound. So if it comes from the French, it's probably Paget, with this being like a voiced sh sound, j, like in measure, Paget. Or if it's another resource in English, it might be more Paget with an a vowel, which would look like Paget. And it would sound like Paget. So sorry, I'm not sure. With names, it's always tricky. I can look it up for you and add it to my names playlist. It also is going to depend on the person. So if their name is of French origin, probably Paget. If it's another origin, then Paget. Okay. Also, it's very good if you know somebody with that name to ask them how they say their name, because there can be variations. Of course, often we have a standard pronunciation for certain names. Usually when I'm making a video for my names playlist, I do a lot of research if I'm looking at a specific person, or generally about how to say that name, and if there's more than one correct way, I'll research that and present that information as well. Okay, a bunch more questions came in, so I'll stay on for a few more minutes to answer them for you. If I don't get to your question, I apologize. I'll have to wrap up in about 5 minutes, so hopefully I'll be able to get to everyone. Okay, the question about the word either. So just one note, you're writing either with a Z, but we want this actually not to have a Z sound, but a TH sound, either. So make sure that you're saying a TH. Your question was whether it's a regional accent to say either or either. And I do think there are regional differences. Either might be more East Coast, either might be more Midwest and West Coast, but you can use either one. So depending on where you're located and who you're speaking to, you can listen for which one version they use. People will recognize either and either. They recognize, and people sometimes use more than one. Personally, I grew up in a place where they said either, and I think here on the West Coast we say either as well, but I also sometimes use either. Okay, great question. I do have a video about either, neither, and neither that you could check out as well if that's helpful for you. Okay. A question about the word adequate. adequate. We have first syllable stress, the black cat vowel, and then this QU says qua. We have a reduced final schwa, quat, or I sound. So it sounds like adequate. Length on your first syllable, adequate. I hope that's an adequate explanation for you. Thank you. Good word. That's a good request. Okay, you're so welcome. Thank you everyone for being a part of class today, for your wonderful questions, for your continued support, and for watching this video as well as my other videos in Word of the Day and our other live streams. As I mentioned, I may or may not be here next Saturday. I'll have to check with my schedule and let you know, but I'll certainly be here in 2 weeks from today and for our regular Word of the Day classes between now and then. Thanks so much for watching the video, for supporting the channel by subscribing and joining as a channel member. I truly appreciate your support. Comments, shares, and likes all also help the channel grow. So thanks so much for all of that. It's been really fun to work with you and to see the channel growing. I'll be back again tomorrow with another Word of the Day, and I look forward to seeing you there. I'm Christine Dunbar from SpeechModification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. SpeechModification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a great class, and hope to see you again soon.